Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I thought it was time I sat down and did another long form video. And this one's been brewing for a while. And this one I basically wanted to respond to these comments that I received from someone on Facebook. Because she made some very Islamophobic comments. And I cannot stand the bigotry. Okay, and it got me really thinking about a lot of things. It got me thinking a lot about Orientalism, and just how our culture here in the West is just so deeply Islamophobic, with the way that we view other cultures, not just Islamophobic, but Orientalist and supremacist with the way that we view other cultures. So I really wanted to unpack some of what she said. Let's just look at what she said, okay? She basically sent this screenshot. Where is it? She sent the screenshot. She didn't send the screenshot. I made a screenshot of what she said. This is a person who was on Dom's friend list. No, she's not a friend, okay? She's obviously followed him for his posts, liked what he was posting, would message him a lot, trying to chit chat with him, and then also posting a bunch of nonsense. And recently, because me and Dom share our Facebook account, hi, if you're new here, I got kicked off Facebook for truthing too hard and upsetting the powers that be, and, you know, talking about genocide and talking about pedophiles in government and Satanists who run our planet. And so obviously they couldn't have that. So they kicked me off Facebook. They kicked me off Instagram. I had a following across both platforms of about 50,000 people. And I've been rebuilding from scratch. So I am not allowed back on Facebook. So I share Dom's account. We have a kind of couple account. And this woman was sending Islamophobic bullshit into our inbox. Not realizing, she probably doesn't realize where I'm from, right? If you're new, I am 3/4 Pakistani. Let me just state, okay, I don't have a dog in this fight, okay, because I don't identify with any particular religion. I don't believe in organized religion. I don't believe in groupthink. I used to be one of these people who was like, oh, religion is an opiate for the masses and religion is designed just to control people and it's all just made up stories. And I have obviously, since went through my awakening back in 2012, I've obviously been through many dark nights of the soul. And with my work as an oracle, a clairvoyant who reads the fields for my clients and helps them heal through, you know, what it is I see in their Akashic field, comparative mythology and comparative theology is essential for the work that I do. So the way I view religion now is that there were multiple different revelations that were brought to different groups of people at different groups in time. Okay, there were multiple different prophets that brought these channeled, you know, this wisdom, and we can study them. Okay, I'm a syncretist, okay? And when you are a syncretist or an occultist or somebody who goes beyond the, you know, you're into the esoteric, at a certain point, you just go beyond religion and you start to see that you basically, each religion is just a different wisdom tradition that you can pull from for the sake of studying the nature of consciousness and the nature of truth, okay? You don't have to belong to it. That's how I see it, okay? So I believe that you should be able to criticize a religion, okay? Trust me, I don't have a problem with criticizing religion. However, talking trash about Muslims while your country is bombing and doing a genocide against people who are predominantly Muslim it's not a politically neutral act, okay? You're literally doing the work of the Zionist genocidal lobby at this point, okay, all this Islamophobic stuff. If somebody was like a religious minority in Pakistan, if they were a Yazidi in Iraq and they wanted to talk to me and critique Islam, I will absolutely hold space for that conversation, okay? Because somebody as a minority who is experiencing a religion according to the behaviors of that dominant group is one thing. When you belong to a dominant group that's doing a genocide against the group that you're criticizing, that's completely another, okay? So you're literally being genocidally racist at this point. So this is what she said. Okay, Dom had shared, he had shared this from Sami Obeid. I'll just clip it and put it here.
You are literally spitting out APAC talking points. Whoa! They come in a pack. If you agree with that? The Arabs and Muslims are atrocious. Do you agree with that part? All right, everybody, quiet. This is my show. I'm against any loss of human rights, whether it's Muslim people or LGBTQ people, but why does that have to come up when we're talking about the loss of human rights of people being bombed literally right now? You know what that's called? It's called pinkwashing. Pinkwashing, which is not when you mix your reds and whites in the washing machine, which I initially had thought it was. I've lost many good shirts with the pinkwashing, right? This guy knows what I'm talking about, right? The definition of pinkwashing is exploiting the LGBTQ for a political point. It's like, oh, look at their track record of gay rights. Check everywhere's track record of gay rights. It's absolutely.
And then she responded with, what about the rights of women in Muslim countries? I know many Muslims. My friend was engaged to a guy from Iraq. Islam is not kind to women and gay people. I'm not sure why you're supporting it. Miss Monica Thornton, at your big age, okay, how does she not understand that we've been critiquing the Western Islamophobic narrative, okay? That doesn't mean that we are supporting one religion over another, okay? Me and Dom do not belong to any religion, okay? We're both occultists, okay? If we were to belong to a religion, probably the closest would be maybe Valentinian Gnosticism. But really, there isn't one religion that really speaks to what we believe, because our beliefs are also always evolving as we learn more and more, okay? The last couple of years, I have been studying Islam a little bit, because obviously we've been speaking up for Palestine. So I've been learning about their religion and what they believe. And that's, you know, obviously as somebody from Pakistan, that is some of my background. I actually come from a very mixed religious background. We've got Christians in our family. We've got Shias in our family. I'm actually a Sayyid, so I'm a descendant of the Prophet. We've got, my grandmother is a very strict Jehovah's Witness. We even have Israeli Jews in my family, okay, not blood related, obviously, through marriage, and I, for obvious reasons, I don't really have any contact with them, and that's not really something that I've spoken about too widely. I still take the position that I've taken on Zionism and on Israel and whether it should exist. Obviously, I think that everybody who's responsible for the genocide needs to be held accountable. Obviously, they all need to go to jail for a really, really long time. And I actually don't really care what happens to them after that, because once you've done a genocide, you've literally committed the crime of crimes. Okay, so back to her point saying, I'm not sure why you're supporting it. We're not supporting Islam. We're literally just speaking for Palestine and people who are being killed in a genocide. Like, you can be any single religion. We will speak for anybody who's being genocided, okay? If there was a live stream genocide of pagans or devil worshippers, we would also speak for them, okay? Now, obviously, like I say that with a caveat, okay? If it's the Epstein crew, it's my problem with the Epstein crew and all them lot, them Satanists. It's not that they worship Satan. I literally don't care who they worship. What your spiritual practice doesn't mean anything to me. It's the fact that you're using that as an excuse for your sick practices of raping and sacrificing children. Like, that's what I have a problem with. Okay, so, you know, she obviously thinks that she can just be silent or make excuses for a genocide because she thinks that Islam is not kind to women or gay people. I hate to inform you, Miss Monica Thornton, but have you heard about Christianity? Have you heard about just secular people in the West who also treat women like shit, who also treat gay and trans people like shit? Like, up until recently, people weren't even recognizing trans people's right to exist. So, you know, in Pakistan, when, you know, my ancestors are from, we've had a third gender that has been recognized since ancient times. Not a lot of people know that. A lot of people like to say that we throw them off roofs. No, we have an actual community of Khwaja Sera third gender people, okay? Commonly, they are referred to, they're commonly associated with, you know, people will call them like a hermaphrodite, which I understand is not a politically correct term. But that's, you know, what outsiders who are not part of that community will refer to them, that they're like an intersex. But they're not actually just intersex, okay? There's actually a lot of transgender and a lot of gender non-conforming or gay femboys that are part of that community. So, you know, I'm not saying that they don't get discriminated against by, you know, the wider public or conservative public. There is discrimination against them, okay, but they are a recognized and visible part of our community. They'll literally, you know, you see them every day. Like, a lot of the time they'll go out, they'll beg on the street, they do sex work, they do other jobs as well. Like, so I want to add a caveat here, because obviously them begging and doing sex work is indicative of their systemic discrimination by the state. So even though socially they have been accepted since ancient times as a third gender, legally they were not allowed to use the gender that they expressed themselves as on their ID cards, which made it very problematic for them to get normal mainstream jobs. So I think there's obviously been a lot of campaigning by them and their allies to for some changes in the law so that they can live normal lives and not just be reduced to begging and sex work. So I think it's been, I forget the exact date, but in the last 15 years, they were allowed to use the gender that they expressed themselves as on their ID cards, which allows them to marry, and it also allows them to get various administrative jobs. There is still discrimination against them, but I would say what's happening in the US right now with the pushback against trans people is, look, I don't want to say categorically, but it definitely seems to be worse right now for trans people in the US, where they're not even acknowledging their right to exist as trans people. So yeah, it's a nuanced conversation. I'm actually going to put some links in the description so that you can actually do a little bit of research on the Khwaja Sera community in Pakistan and also in Bangladesh, which is another Muslim majority country. In India, they also have their communities, because obviously both Pakistan and Bangladesh used to belong to India, used to be part of India, but both of them formed their own Islamic states. Like you know, if you guys are not new here, you'll know I've modeled for 20 years. I've modeled in Pakistan. Our fashion industry has a lot of third gender, Khwaja Sera, or transgender individuals working as makeup artists and things like that. So, you know, and they've been much, much more visible part of our community than trans people have been in the West. And you'll also commonly see them performing at weddings. They do dance performances and things like that at weddings. So they are very much a visible part of Muslim Pakistani society. Like, they're not invisible. They don't necessarily have to hide their identity. People know that they're trans. Not always, because some of them pass really well, but obviously for some of them getting sort of gender affirmative medical care is not super accessible. So yeah, like, people need to educate themselves because there's just so much ignorance being spouted on this subject. So I'm just going to be like debunking so much of these common Islamophobic tropes that I hear all the time, because when white Western people talk shit about Islam, I get my back up, not because I have a dog in the fight about Islam. It's because they're not really having a problem with Islam. They're having a problem with Muslims and brown people and people who come from Muslim majority countries, because they'll talk shit about all of us, even the ones that come from religious minorities as well. Or they'll use people who are belong to religious minority communities in Pakistan as like a racist dog whistle to legitimize their racism, going, oh, they treat their minorities so badly. Yes, there is a problem with minorities being discriminated against in Muslim majority countries, but you cannot use us as a dog whistle to justify your racism against us as an entire group. Like, I'm just not going to have it, okay? Because as somebody that has a cross-cultural perspective and has traveled all over the world and seen how people behave in many different countries, there is so much fucking hypocrisy with the way that you view the East, okay? And like, yeah, okay, a lot of people bring it back to like Edward Said and his work on Orientalism. Yeah, I haven't read that. I would love to read that, because so many people have referenced his work in comment sections about this very subject. If you all want to go and check out his work, I do recommend it. It's on my reading list, but I can't say, because I've watched interviews, and the things that he says are very, very interesting, and I like his perspective. But yeah, she's just, sorry, I'm just trying to find her previous comments. She literally will just fucking send so many messages to him. Yeah, so when he was in London visiting me, she was asking him, she was like, how are you liking it there? And she was just like, oh, it's been taken over by Islam. I'm like, what the hell is she talking about? Is she talking about the fact that our mayor is a Pakistani Muslim, not particularly strict or observant one, but it just sounds like some just right-wing nonsense. Like, I walk around all over London, like I'm staying in Dalston at the moment, which is obviously a very, very diverse community here. Like, she probably saw 3 hijabis one day walking in front of her and was like, oh my god, we're being overtaken by Islam. I just can't with this racist bitch. And yeah, I said to Dom, like, we have to get rid of her. He was just like, do whatever you want. Like, obviously I've unfriended her, but she still continued. I literally checked her on this racist shit that she was saying. Are you serious right now? This is justification for land theft and genocide. What are you even saying? My friend was engaged to a guy from Iraq, therefore bomb Gaza, kill 1.2 million civilians in Iraq. What are you even saying? She didn't reply. I've asked her before to clarify some of the other bullshit things that she was saying, and she also would not reply, and then continues to just send more shit. Yeah, so anyway, I wanted to kind of do a deep dive on this, okay, because I've observed some things traveling to Muslim majority countries about the way that women are treated in these countries. And it is not like, this is the problem that I have with the West. And there's problems with every culture. I'll give you that, okay? I'm not saying that the like Eastern cultures or Islamic cultures are better, or that Western cultures are better, okay? But one of the big problems that I see with Western culture, as somebody who has grown up here, is that there is a tendency to view our culture as the best, or the most advanced, or the most progressive, or the most moral. And it's just patent bullshit, okay? Because we've just seen, after a live stream genocide, that they have no morality. Like, they'll sit there and I say they as if I'm not part of the culture, but like I do, I feel like a person who's kind of cross-cultural, kind of a little bit of a cultural outsider, but also, I do also have to acknowledge that I am part of the culture as well. But a lot of the dominant white Western culture will think that they can morally lecture to other, it's the white man's burden, that they have this moral responsibility to civilize all these other countries who are behind. and that they are more advanced and more progressive and everybody needs to follow their lead. And it's just bullshit, because there's so much degenerate bullshit that the West is just so good at, like bombing other countries for a start, being racist, another one, being super hypersexual is another one. We're going to totally unpack and compare the treatment of women in Islamic countries and the treatment of women in Western countries, because it is not like we have it so good over here, okay? There's a reason why so many white Western women are running to revert to Islam, okay? Especially after seeing some of these Qassam Brigade fighters, you know, when they release the hostages, talking about how women are literally like so sacred and like the fountain of heaven. And they're just like, man, none of these white Western dudes treated me like that. Like, and they're like, let's get you married. And they're just like, God, I can't even get a guy to text me back after I just like opened my legs and like slept with him after the first day. These guys are just ready to like wife you up straight away. And all I have to do is just cover my hair. Like, there's a reason why they're running to it. Now, obviously, as somebody who's cross-cultural, I've seen the issues with both communities. So I'm not running to it either, but I definitely see why, because, you know, dating culture in the West is completely fucked. Like, it's completely broken. Like, you know, with, you know, people talking about like great replacement and blah, blah, blah. Like, yes, there is a declining, there does seem to be a declining population amongst not just white Westerners, but just people in the West in general. And I don't know if that's deliberate. You could argue that it's deliberate, that they maybe have created the conditions in which it's become so hard for families to afford to have children, the way that our family structures are in the West, you know, very individualized, that kids will move out of home very early on, that women obviously pursue a career and are expected to go 50-50 with men right from the jump, even when they're having their babies, that you can't bring your children into the workplace or anything like that. It makes it very, very difficult to then have a family as well, unless you want to go trad wife. And we can do a whole other video as well talking about trad wife life, because there's so much that I have to say about it. You know, these are just all the kind of conversations that everybody's having, and that I think we need to be having more of. In Eastern culture, it's not so much like that, okay? There's a lot more joint family systems. I know Mediterranean culture is also like that. Dom is from an Italian family, and in their culture, it's quite common also to have joint family systems, which is basically where you have like 2 or even 3 generations living under one roof. So even after kids get married, they will still live under the same roof as their parents, and then they'll have kids within the family home. So there will be grandparents, the new young parents, and then the little kids all living under one roof. South Asians are very common for this. And there's, you know, if the house gets too small, they'll just move into a bigger house. And it makes it a lot easier to have children, especially if both parents want to also continue to pursue education and work, as many South Asian young couples do. You know, a lot of women, you know, from South Asian backgrounds, Indian, Pakistani. I can't speak for Arabs because I'm just not from that culture, but I assume it's similar. Also pursue education and a career, and are able to, because we have extended family structures around us, okay? It's very normal to, you know, as a young couple, be living at home when you first have kids. So you have your mother or your mother-in-law to help you take care of those young infants while you're pursuing your degree or your career or whatever. So, you know, like, for example, okay, just like in Iran, okay, I just have this one particular stat. So in Iran, 70% of STEM university graduates are women. Okay, compared to in the US, it's like 1/3. Okay, and this is just one example. Okay, if you also look at, like, you know, statistics in Pakistan, India. Obviously, India is not Muslim majority. We'll talk about that as well, because India does not treat women super well either, and it's not a majority Muslim country. It's a majority Hindu country, and it has massive issues with sexual violence and just patriarchal systems towards women. But you will see women, massive uptake of science, engineering, medicine, amongst women in cultures like that, because we prize education and we prize career advancement. Okay, so America still hasn't had a female president. How long? Okay, but America is like, when was America founded? 1776? Okay, so 1776, still hasn't had a female president. In Pakistan, we had our first female head of state in 1988. Okay, the UK did beat us to that. I will give you that. We had Margaret Thatcher in 1979. So they beat us by 10 years. But considering that Pakistan was only founded in 1947, I would say that's pretty good going. Like, that's pretty good going that we got a female prime minister in like the first few decades of the country's founding. She was the first woman elected to lead a Muslim majority country, and multiple Muslim majority countries have had female heads of state. In Mauritania, which is also a Muslim majority country, divorce is completely celebrated for a woman. It's actually, if a woman wants to get divorced, they actually throw her a party, and it's seen as like a new, like she's free and she's ready to start a whole new chapter in her life. And you know, these women will start businesses, they'll become independent, and yeah, it's definitely celebrated. Whereas if you can compare it to Christian, white, conservative nationals in America, which is obviously the most extreme Western culture you can get, divorce is not celebrated. In fact, divorce is not, I think it's not even permitted in Christianity. It's certainly not encouraged. And you've got conservative males in America, not that Monica's from America, she's from the UK, but hey, this is editing Sandal. So I did just notice when editing this video that she actually lives in the US. So all my points about the US are valid because that's the culture that she's now chosen to assimilate into. So even though she's from the UK, yeah, the US, my point still stands. And also just the culture is similar anyway, especially when it comes to Islamophobia and Orientalism and just white supremacy in general and colonialism. They are literally peas in a pod. Like the apple of the United States did not fall far from the British tree. You know, it's a similar culture, right? Coming on the whatever podcast and telling women to endure physical abuse and stop getting divorced. And yeah, it's just not encouraged. In Islam, divorce is actually permissible, whereas in Judaism, women are not allowed to get divorced without consent of their husband. And in Christianity, it's not allowed at all, except I think if there's been infidelity, which, you know, it's just so common in so many marriages. So I guess, yeah. I've already spoken about the third gender. So yeah, India, Pakistan, Nepal have legally recognized third gender. India's Supreme Court recognized transgender people as a third gender in 2014. I maybe shouldn't keep throwing in India. India does have a large Muslim minority. Okay, they're one of the largest religious minorities in India, but they are definitely a majority Hindu country and a country that is having a lot of issues with Hindu nationalism. Like, it's just crazy that, like, you know, Westerners will talk about how brutal Islam is while bodies of children in Gaza are being piled up. It's literally the medieval savagery of these people knows no bounds, and they don't even understand how they're looking to the rest of the world. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the podcast, and if you are and you want more, come and join me over on Patreon. Patreon is where I get a lot more raw and unfiltered, and I speak much more freely, knowing that I'm just talking to a select group of my inner circle. So if you want to support the channel and you like what I'm doing at Inner Alchemy and you're resonating with what I'm teaching here, come on over. The link is in the description and I'll see you there. Like, y'all are also unkind to women. You're also unkind to transgender people. The amount of transphobic violent transphobic hate that I have seen in the truth and spiritual communities over the last year is disgusting. And that's mostly people from America and the UK. So, and very misogynistic stuff as well. And we're going to unpack a lot of that. Okay. So y'all are not just unkind to transgender people, LGBT people, women. You're unkind to minorities, to animals, to people in other countries who you repeatedly bomb and make excuses for. It's just giving that you're just exactly like your ancestors and like nothing has changed. And we're all noticing. Yeah, children. I mean, Western leaders are literally pedophiles, Satanists, and cannibals. And yet they're talking about how Islam is unkind to women and LGBT people, so therefore don't speak out against the genocide that your pedophile, Satanist, cannibal leaders are committing against people who are Muslim majority. So one of the things that often gets left out in the conversation around Islam and women's rights is they conveniently forget that when Islam was actually created, they literally introduced women's rights at that time, okay? The culture at that time during, medieval period was extremely misogynistic, okay? Women could not own property. They basically had zero rights. They were traded as cattle, okay? Now, obviously, people now are looking at Islam through that lens of how it hasn't, because it's a newer religion, it hasn't evolved and changed and kind of been watered down as much as religions like Judaism and Christianity. But Judaism and Christianity were way more misogynistic. Islam literally introduced women for women. They mandated that women should be able to own property. And oh yes, fun fact, the oldest continuously running university in the world in Fez, Morocco, was founded by a Muslim woman. Okay, to vote, to be able to own businesses, and they introduced financial rights in marriage up until when women had zero financial rights in marriage. Okay, before Islam, men could marry unlimited wives. They literally could have unlimited wives, unlimited concubines, unlimited consorts. And when Islam came, the Prophet said that you can have no more than 4 wives. And if you're going to be with any woman, you have to marry them. You can't have this concubine bullshit. You have to marry them, and you have to treat every single one of them equally. They need to all be provided for equally. You need to spend equal time with them. You need to care for them equally. They all need to be given a house and treated fairly. Okay. And it has to be only with the consent of the first wife, and only if you cannot produce heirs. Okay, if for whatever reason the initial couple cannot produce any more children, because at that time the world was less populated and they were trying to build nations. Okay, there's not just an Islamic concept. This was also in Judaism. Abraham and Sarah were trying to build nations. They were trying to create bloodlines, and so it was important for them to expand their not just their family, but their nation, their bloodline. This is why it's important to actually study that family tree, the human family tree, and all the different bloodlines of Noah. And I will be bringing more offerings on it. I'll be doing more content on it slowly. It's been such a huge body of work, and obviously this work takes a lot of time to bring to you, to edit and everything. But honestly, studying the bloodlines of Noah has been so critical for understanding the work that I'm doing now, and the ancestral healing, the alchemy, and also understanding what's happening right now with all the kind of clash of civilizations and end time agendas and race wars that they're trying to bring about. You gotta be understanding the bloodlines of Noah. So please stay tuned. Please subscribe, give a like so that this video can reach more people, so that when I have the time to actually create the trainings around this, there will be enough people who will be interested in it in order to make it worthwhile. Okay, I've had to kind of really focus on rebuilding my audience after being deplatformed, which is why I wasn't able to bring more of those trainings to you guys sooner. So yeah, basically, okay, where was I? And my mum just shared this extra condition and stipulation with me yesterday, that it was only supposed to be practiced during wartime. And it was supposed to be just widows who had children. It was essentially introduced as like a social welfare system. Yeah, so he basically stipulated that if you can't treat each one equally and fairly, and then you just have one, okay? If you cannot provide for all of them equally, and you can't provide for your bloodline that you've already created, and you can't provide for more children that come through, and the women that are going to mother those children, then you should only have one. And the reason why it was even allowed at that time was because there was a lot of like bloodline wars happening at that time, and lots of men were being killed in battle. So you had a lot of women that were widowed, and because the culture was very misogynistic at that time, it wasn't super safe for women. There were limited options for women, especially women with children, to earn a living. So that's why they created this system. Now, I don't personally like it. Like y'all know, I'm very much about like divine union, monogamy, but I can understand the practicalities of why it was introduced, especially within the context of polygamous cultures at that time, where men were just having multiple wives, multiple consorts, just having sex with whoever they wanted, and the women just had no say. Like there wasn't like these men could just basically do what they wanted. Yeah. And it's just ultimately comes down to suppression of the divine feminine, suppression of Sophia, just turning her into just this property, essentially. So in Islam, a woman is allowed to kill her rapist. Okay, compare that to the West, in the US and the UK, where multiple women have been convicted for murder for killing their rapists. Okay, they were actually acting in self-defense. Okay, there have been multiple cases of women being even put on death row and being executed for killing rapists in self-defense. Okay, now this is fucking backwards shit. Okay, now I'm not saying that every Islamic country follows the Quran perfectly and follows Sharia law perfectly. But for people who are acting like Sharia law is this big scary thing because they see like some medieval stoning happening because some girl watched a Hollywood movie or, you know, shit like that has happened, and they think that that's Sharia law. You need to actually study Sharia law, okay? Our whole international laws of a whole international body of laws surrounding conduct in conflict is all based on Sharia law. Why is that? Because the Moors literally ruled over the whole of the Mediterranean for hundreds of years before the Roman Empire took it back. Okay, so this whole thing that Europe is being invaded by Muslims, that's already happened. That's why we have an Arabic number system, okay? Like we've already been taken over by the Middle East, okay? These were pagan lands. These were goddess worshipping lands, much like the Middle East or West Asia, okay? The Arabian Peninsula was all goddess worshipping lands. And then Abrahamic religions took it over, okay? So that's already happened. Like this being a Christian country, this was never a Christian country, okay? Christianity comes from Palestine and Egypt. So that's already happened. Yeah, so Islam also reversed the outdated and misogynistic practice of a dowry and reversed it with the concept of a mehr, which is basically like a gift that's given. So the dowry is basically, it's a very ancient misogynistic practice. It's also still practiced in the West. It's called a bridal registry. The bridal registry, I've done a lot of research since getting engaged on different bridal customs. Guys, let me know in the comments section if you want me to do a separate long form video talking about bridal customs throughout East West, because it's obviously has been a personal interest of mine as me and Dom have been deciding how we want to tie the knot. Yeah, tie the knot, interestingly, is also comes from, I think, like pagan, what's the word? The binding ritual, the hand fasting ritual. So there's lots and lots of different practices from different cultures that we kind of been looking into, because obviously we both have mixed ancestry. He is Italian, Sicilian, with some English, German, French, Canadian, and Irish. And I am mostly Pakistani, Punjabi. I have some Uzbek, have a little bit of Welsh, Scottish, a little bit of Danish, French. I don't know. My maternal grandmother is from Leicester, but that's her ancestry. So she seems to know a lot about hers. My South Asian side, I've not been able to track quite as closely. I think it's mostly Punjabi, but it's probably a mix of a bunch of other different ethnic groups from that region. The last couple of years I was looking a lot into different like wedding rituals and things like that. So, and I'm going to talk about some of it here, okay? So dowries were practiced, they're still practiced in some parts of South Asia, including in Pakistan, even though they actually are not compatible with Sharia law. The dowry is basically like a bride price. It's when the groom's family will expect that the bride's family will give her gifts to set up the house, okay? And it will usually be like very nice linens and very nice tableware and silver and there have been horrific practices of just awful like acid attacks or like wife burning attacks in rural parts of India, Pakistan, and other countries where dowry is still practiced, because these fucking village idiots are greedy motherfuckers and want the dowry. So they'll marry, their son to some woman, and then they will, she had an accident in the kitchen, and they'll burn her so that they can keep the dowry. And it's just a really sick practice. I'm not sure how prevalent it is, but I know that when I was a teenager at school and I was studying it, that there were multiple incidents that I was able to research for an essay that I was writing about it. It's a dowry it is still practiced, but it's generally quite frowned upon. From what my mum was telling me, it's like it is considered a little bit backwards and a little bit regressive, because it's not just because it's not compatible with Sharia law, but because it's misogynistic, okay? That you should not have to, like, you should want the woman for the woman, not for like the money that she's going to be bringing into the union. So how in the West, it's traditional that the bride's family will pay for the wedding. In Sharia law, it's the groom's family that pays for everything. They'll pay for the wedding, and they will also provide a mer, which is basically like a financial gift that she asks for. She can ask for whatever she wants. She can ask for a diamond ring. Islam does not commonly practice engagement rings, but she can ask for jewelry. Jewelry is very commonly given in Islamic and also in Indian cultures on weddings, and when a woman has a child. Obviously the West has started to catch on to this, or I don't know if it's always been practiced. I think you guys call it push presents. It's a very, very commonly practiced in our culture, and I believe in Islamic culture and also Indian culture as well. And I'm not sure exactly where it comes from. I don't know if it's like an Islamic thing or if it's older than that. But yeah, she could ask for a gift on marriage, and she can also ask for a monthly allowance. She's not required to do any housework. Other than what she would normally just do for herself. She's not required to do housework for him. And, generally, according to his or her status or their status, he is supposed to provide her with domestic help. And in Islam, there's also this concept that his money is her money and her money is her money. So her money is her own. His money is also her own. Okay, so yeah, I definitely like that one, because yeah, I just feel like, women, we give so much. We are mothers, we raise children, we give birth, we take a massive physical risk in doing so, and that should be compensated. And I like that in Islam and in Sharia law they acknowledge that. So yeah, there are certain things that I've noticed in Pakistan, for example. I mainly talk about Pakistan because that's where I'm from, and that's where I can speak with confidence about what's commonly practiced versus what's tends to be not so commonly practiced. So, like, for example, with the 4 wives thing, I asked my mum, is it common? Is it like, do people practice this? And she said it's extremely uncommon and extremely frowned upon. And if you do it, people will talk trash about you. Okay. It's not considered good to take a second wife. It's considered very abusive. So I'm not saying that, Pakistan is perfect with how it treats women, but people just, I feel like Westerners just have this very cartoonish idea about Muslims being these like turban wearing terroristic savages who all beat their wives and don't educate their young girls. And it's just fucking racist nonsense, okay? People are the same everywhere, okay? I'm not saying that they're exactly the same, but people care about each other. Men care about their wives in lots of different countries. They do their best. Yes, there are problems with misogyny everywhere. There's just different breeds of it according to how different cultures are socialized, okay? And I'm going to talk about the West, trust me, with its porn, pedophile, hookup, hypersexual bullshit later on. So stay tuned. We are getting to it. I have lots of notes. So one thing I observed in Pakistan that is inconsistent with Sharia law is the way that middle and upper class Pakistanis, who mostly all have domestic help, will treat their staff like shit. That's very un-Islamic, okay? Classism is un-Islamic. It's not compatible with, look, I'm not claiming to be an expert on Sharia law or an expert on Islam. I'm literally just sharing what I've learned over the last couple of years. So if there are Muslims in the comments, you can share your opinions, and, I invite you to disagree with me. But one thing that I've observed in Pakistan is that they treat staff who come from the kind of working class very, very badly. And I feel like that is something that comes from, it's not as extreme as what I saw in India. When I was in India, they literally treat the lower classes like dogs. They treat them like animals, and it is disgusting. I was horrified. But in Pakistan, you do still also see a little bit of that as well. I didn't see it as extreme, but I still saw it, and it made me really fucking uncomfortable, and I don't fucking like it. It's not nice. Like, I understand, like, I have spoken to some people being like, why are you guys so awful to your staff? Why do you treat people like this? Why are you so classist? And they're like, if you get too soft with them, then they start to take the piss. Like, they start to slack off. They start to steal shit. They'll not show up for work. Like, they think that you're soft. They expect you to be firm with them. And it makes me uncomfortable. I don't like it. So that's something that is very un-Islamic, okay? Because in Islam, it's supposed to be very kind and charitable. Everybody's supposed to be equal. If you see with Arab culture, hey, I'm not saying that Arabs don't have this problem either. Everybody's spoken about, the problems with the kafala system and how it's used to like bring in domestic servants from African nations, and it's basically like slavery light, or they actually do have slaves from African nations, or like in countries like Dubai, for example, they will have like debt slaves. They'll have people trapped in debt slavery from India and Pakistan. So I'm not saying that it doesn't also exist in other Muslim majority countries, but it's un-Islamic. So, if you're claiming to be following the religion, then like, why are you treating people who come from lower class like so badly? Okay, so the Prophet Muhammad taught his followers not to never argue with the woman. Okay. And actually, this is interesting because when I researched this, I was just like, that's interesting because that's something that my grandfather, who was a Shia, used to always say. He used to say it to everyone. He used to say it to my dad. My mum tried to pass on that same wisdom to several of the guys that I dated in the past. Not all of them. They mostly didn't follow it. But he used to, I didn't know that, I didn't understand that it came from Islam, but I think it's very great advice. He told them, don't argue with women because you're just always gonna, my grandfather would say, don't argue with a woman because you always lose. Like either you, if you're going to win the argument, you're going to lose in the bedroom. So it's just better to not argue. Now, I don't necessarily agree because I think sometimes we can be, basically the Prophet said that you should allow your woman to vent emotionally, understand that it's our nature to be a little bit emotionally volatile because of our hormonal cycle. And sometimes she just wants to vent and you should just allow her to do that and not have to get defensive or like fight with her because that's very like not masculine to also be matching her same emotional storm. And I think that that's great advice. So what else? Okay, so marriage contracts. So Islam introduced the idea of a nikah or a marriage contract. Now in the West, marriage contracts, or rather prenups, are typically designed to protect the man's financial interests. So that's how they were introduced anyway. Obviously, now that women are making their own money and many women are out earning men, a lot of prenups, women are starting to use prenups to protect their financial interests. But in Islam, the marriage contract, or nikah, which is commonly practiced, it's not the only religion that practices a marriage contract, was brought in to protect the woman's financial interests. Okay, it's designed for your protection. And obviously with me and Dom getting together and talking about marriage very early on in our relationship, and then all the research that I was doing about Palestine and the history of the region, and obviously I was looking into Islam and reading the Quran, I started looking into the idea of a nikah. And I love the idea of a nikah, and me and Dom are going to be having one. And yeah, I think it's a great thing. So, ladies, I do encourage you to look into it. Like I'm not saying, I don't think you need to be a Muslim to have one. Okay. You could just literally have a prenup, but you just write it as if it's, whatever you want. Like you can literally write whatever you want. Like you could say, I want to be able to have 2 days off every month when I have my period where no demands are put on me. You're going to take care of all the childcare, all the household tasks, and you're just going to let me rest for 2 days. Like I'm definitely going to be putting that one in. You can have protections for infidelity, financial protections for infidelity. There's a whole bunch of things that I've written down that I want to put in mine. I'll ask Dom what he wants to put in it as well, because protection should go both ways, and both partners should feel safe when entering a serious union like a marriage. But yeah, I love the idea of a nikah, and the fact that women in the West do not have any kind of equivalent. All you have is the state legislation around marriage, and so many Western women are having relationships and having babies with men that they're not even married to. So you have literally no legal protections. You're investing your time, your body, your womb into this relationship, and you have zero legal protections if he decides that he wants to one up on you, he wants to leave, he wants to cheat on you, he wants to start abusing you. There's literally nothing to protect you, your financial interests, if you should need to get out of that relationship. So I highly encourage all of you ladies to look into the nikah and decide if you want to incorporate that into your relationships. And just the idea of like, okay, I know that there can be issues. I definitely feel like there are issues with the way in the East, in Islamic cultures or more conservative cultures, will place this massive emphasis on getting married early on and not having relationships without being married. And there are issues with this, of course, because it means you can get locked down with a person that's just really not right for you. My God, if I married like, your boyfriend that I was with at 19, I would be like with the most abusive narcissist right now. I mean, hopefully I would not, like I might even be dead by now. Like he was so awful. but just any of the guys that I dated in the past, I'd just be like in hell if I had married any of them. So yeah, I think that there are issues with trying to encourage young people to marry too early on, and there is an issue with that. I don't think that young people should be getting married before the age of at least 26, because your frontal lobe, your prefrontal cortex isn't even developed yet. It's not fully developed until around 26. I'm sure it varies from person to person. But you know, I've just turned 41, and I feel like, now I feel like I'm maybe ready to get married. Like, I don't feel ready to start a family yet. But yeah, I just think that like this emphasis to like lock it down really early on is just, you know, I definitely look, there's issues on both sides. I think that there's a massive issue with the way that, you know, relationships are very non-committal in the West, and so many guys will just expect sex right from the jump. And it's just so dishonoring to us as women. Like, you know, just the whole idea of, let's talk about veiling. Okay, I can't believe that I completely didn't talk about veiling. Obviously, you know, many people criticize Islam because of veiling. Firstly, in Islam, you're actually not allowed to enforce Islam on anyone. You're not supposed to force anyone to be Muslim. Now, whether that's actually practiced in practice, whether people conform to that, is a different debate. But they're not practicing it properly if they're forcing, you know, their wives or forcing people in their family to veil. It's supposed to be a sovereign choice that a woman makes, and a choice that she makes between her and God. And is, you know, obviously, I actually spent a little bit of time researching this, because there's actually nothing in the Quran that says that a woman needs to cover her hair. There just isn't. Like, there's nothing that says that. The only one passage that I could find is where it says that you should take it refers to a garment that Jewish women already wore to cover their hair, because it's a desert region, so a lot of people would cover their hair anyway because it's hot. And so, you know, to keep sand out of their hair, to keep the heat off their head and off their neck. And in Judaism, hair is considered sacred. Obviously, it's slightly different in Islam. That's not necessarily the reason why they veil in Islam. But in Judaism, the reason why Jewish women, Orthodox Jewish women, wear wigs is because it's not for modesty. It's because the hair itself is considered sacred. And so it's basically, they're consecrating it by covering it. That only those who have been consecrated by God to be in an intimate relationship with them are allowed to see it and are allowed to touch it. Okay, so obviously, as Islam basically emerged out of Judaism, okay, Islam is like the trilogy in the 3-part series, the Abrahamic story. It's literally part 3. So it's the fulfillment of the Abrahamic prophecy. So the head wrap that Jewish women were already wearing, there's a passage that says just to cover your chest with it. So some people have said that yes, it does stipulate that you're obligated to cover your hair, but many scholars argue that it does, that there's no requirement, which is why a lot of Muslim women do not cover their hair. Lots of them don't. And the modesty rules are basically, they don't just cover sexual modesty. It's not just about sexual modesty. When they stipulate to be modest, it's to be modest in all areas. So sexual modesty, when it comes to your wealth, don't be like flashing the cash and being bling bling. I'm talking to you guys, Emiratis. It's just, I just see a lot of hypocrisy, because when I actually look at the text, I'm like, oh, that's what it says. So a lot of people aren't actually following that. Which is why I just think like it's good to study these traditions, and it's good to go, oh yeah, okay, this is what they teach, and that's probably a good idea to follow that. But you can't, like, it's not easy to do it perfectly. And that's why I just think that you don't have to necessarily belong to this group. You can be a syncretist, you can be an occultist, you can be a person that studies comparative mythology and go, that resonates with me, that doesn't, okay? Because the whole covering the hair and, wearing the robes and the abayas and stuff literally come from the fact that it was a desert religion, okay? With the veiling as well, it was not just about sexual modesty, okay? Again, a lot of Muslims criticize the burqa, and obviously everybody thinks of the Taliban when they talk about the burqa. We should not even be having a conversation about the Taliban or about Afghanistan when we talk about Islam. Everybody wants to jump straight on Afghanistan when they talk about Islam. They don't want to talk about Indonesia. They don't want to talk about Malaysia. They don't want to talk about Turkey. They don't want to talk about Bosnia because it's not convenient. It's not convenient to talk about just normal, moderate Muslims. They want to talk about Afghanistan. Afghanistan, the Taliban the Pathans are crypto Jews. They're not, I don't want to say they're not Muslim because it's considered a bit taboo to say who is Muslim and who isn't, but they literally don't follow Sharia law. They follow Pakhtunwali, which is basically their own ancestral law, and it's based on Old Testament law. That's why it's so strict. It's based on old Jewish law, Torah law. That's why they're so much stricter than everyone else, than all the other Muslim countries, because they're crypto Jews. You can literally see it in if you see the kids in the madrasas when they're praying, it's exactly like when you see the Jews praying at the Wailing Wall. Okay. And that, I don't know if I want to say exactly what that rocking is. It's very deep. I don't want to say because, a lot of the time when you see the kids doing it's kids we're talking about. So but if you know, we'll talk about it in another video. The rocking thing, but it's not just a Jewish thing because it actually goes back to ancient Babylon, but we'll talk about it in another video. But yeah, I would not say that they are typical of Muslims, the Taliban or Afghanistan, okay? Because that's not Sharia law that they follow, but it's always used as an example of how scary Sharia law is. Yeah. Okay, so while Westerners are talking about how awful Muslims are to their women, they will go and celebrate getting married with a trip to the strip club. Literally celebrating their divine union by having a bunch of naked women gyrate on their face. Are you telling me that that's being kind to women, treating women equally? You're literally betraying your wife, being a disgusting, misogynistic, perverted degenerate. Come on. Not just that, but just a normalization of just porn culture, pedophile culture. You're literally we're literally told that every man looks at porn, that it's impossible to find a guy who does not look at porn. Porn is banned in Islam, by the way. You go to Indonesia, I lived in Bali for a while, right? You cannot get porn in Bali. You cannot watch it. It's blocked because it's not allowed in their religion. So it's kind of giving hypocritical, and literally you're told that every single Western man, you will not find one who doesn't watch porn. This is how badly you ladies in the West are gaslit by your men, that you're told that you cannot have a man who's loyal to you, and yet you're talking about how bad these men are because their religion allows them to have 4 wives, even though most of them don't practice that, and you can literally put in your marriage contract that you don't want that. I'm not saying everybody should go become a Muslim, but I'm just saying stop being such hypocrites, especially when your government is the most fucking genocidal government in recent history. So yeah, and I've said in multiple videos, the top porn category is, 10 years ago it was teen. So all your men's are literally watching kiddie porn. You're literally all married to pedophiles, or you're not even married. You're literally laying up in bed, having sex with these dudes who are looking at fucking teenagers and incest porn. I think incest porn is a more popular category now. I actually haven't kept up with what's the latest of what's happening in porn. My fiance doesn't look at porn, thankfully. But yeah, like that's what your men are doing. And then you're talking about Muslim men treating their women badly. It's just like, it's so dumb. Like, you're so, like, not you. This woman who said this, and anyone who thinks like her, is literally so dumb. Like, she can't even see the misogyny because she's swimming in it. So yeah. So the UN estimates that 1 in 3 women worldwide will experience physical or sexual violence during their lifetime. I would say it's probably a lot more than that. So that's a global problem. It's not a uniquely Muslim problem. It's literally everywhere. All women. Here's another one. Aging and motherhood. The West is so unkind to women who are elder and women who are mothers, that literally women are terrified of becoming either. Like, I know this because obviously I've experienced this firsthand. I worked as a model for 20 years. Like, I consider it terrifying. And even when, at the time I was modeling, I was just scared that, like, if I became a mother, my career would just be over. And it's certainly possible that it might be, because, your body goes through a lot of changes. And are you still going to be able to maintain sample size measurements, like, once you've had a child? Like, obviously that is kind of unique to my industry. But I feel like a lot of women go through that, like, just with the way that the work culture is in the West. It's not kind to mothers. Like, it doesn't allow women to effectively be parents and then also have a career. Whereas in Islamic cultures, you're literally financially supported to have a child, or you have your own parents. Sorry, I needed to warm up this light a little bit. Or you have your own parents or your husband's parents to help you raise the child. But in general, in Eastern cultures, I don't know if this is specifically an Islamic thing, but I just know that in Pakistan, where my family are from, elders are respected. Like, you're not even supposed to talk back to your elders. Now, obviously, that can be toxic in and of itself. That can have its own issues. I'm not saying that should be a thing categorically. But I'm just saying that a little bit about it. So the whole point that I'm trying to make here, okay? I'm not trying to say that this one's better and you guys are worse. I'm trying to say that uniting the polarities would be a good thing, okay? That's literally all my podcast is about. That's what this whole channel is about. It's about alchemy, okay? It's about unifying those polarities. And that's why I believe that a lot of the thought leaders who are bringing forth not new ideas, but ancient future ideas that are going to help shift us into the next golden age are people that have a cross-cultural perspective, okay? Either people who are of mixed ethnic heritage, people who are immigrants or expats, just white immigrants living in other countries, or just people who have people who travel, who are able to see the different things, the good things about a culture or the bad things about a culture. Because the problem is, when you stay in one place all the time and you don't travel outside of the place that you came from and you don't expose yourself to other cultures, you literally become culturally indoctrinated and you cannot see how you've been brainwashed, and you can't see the things about other cultures that might be a little bit more liberating if you were to open your mind a little bit. So there's things about Western culture that I prefer, there's things about Eastern culture that I prefer, and there's things where I can kind of see it from both sides, and I don't think that it's a one size fits all. Some things can be liberating for some people, other things can be liberating for other people, and it can switch. So sometimes things can be liberating, and at other times they can be oppressive. Okay, it's like they say in the Hermetic principles, all truths are but half truths, and it's always about, just balancing those polarities. Okay, yes, back to my earlier point about veiling, because I did not finish my point about veiling, and it's actually very, very important. You cannot talk about this subject without talking about veiling. So with the burqa, for example, the face veil, that actually predates Islam. It's not an Islamic thing, and many Muslims have widely criticized it, mainly because it's been used by the Taliban. It's been enforced on women. I think also maybe even in Saudi Arabia. Am I wrong about that? But also many people argue that the House of Saud aren't Muslim either. But look, I don't want to get into that right now. They're Zionists, okay? House of Saud, Saudi royal family are Zionists, okay? So I don't think that you can be a Muslim Zionist. But yeah, with the face veil, that is not an Islamic thing, okay? It predates Islam. I think it comes from sort of ancient tribal North African people who would basically travel across the Sahara and the Arabian Peninsula, which is basically desert regions, okay? And they had these face veils, okay? It wasn't a Muslim thing, okay? Many people who actually don't necessarily follow Islam still wear that as their regional dress. And it's not like they wear it all the time. It's literally just, it's a desert religion, okay? They wear it for practical reasons to keep sand out of their face. And it's not just women who wear it, men wear it as well. Okay, you'll also see Palestinians have obviously popularized the shimmer worn around the face. And it's not just women who wear it. And lots of us protesters will also wear it to hide our identity at protests. I let my face be shown. I'm not scared. But it's not even just about being scared. It's just for sometimes being strategic. But yeah, personally, I think veiling can be absolutely badass. Like, if it's chosen from a sovereign place and you're wearing it out of your own free will for whatever purpose, whether it's practical reasons, for aesthetic reasons, for cultural reasons, you know, obviously I don't agree with anyone being forced to wear it all the time or men forcing it on women, but like, y'all are going to be culturally appropriating this next. And you know, it seems to be when a culture dictates that women behave in a certain way, that seems to be fine when it's the West. And whatever other people do, whatever non-Western white people do, is considered backwards and used to justify their subjugation, their enslavement, their genocide. So the lens through what they dictate as being savage seems to constantly be changing according to their lens. But you aren't the moral police of the world, okay? And, you know, I say you because I'm not, look, I know that most of you here are not that. And I don't want to, you know, center those types of people with my content. But mainly because we've obviously had some of those people around us. I don't know why. I don't know where they're coming from. Probably because of all the, you know, the work that we did in recent years around the medical freedom and, you know, speaking out against the, you know, the medical tyranny and the pharmaceutical companies and the bioweapon agenda. There were a lot of MAGA people who are now getting caught up in all this great replacement theory. And I've even seen Muslim people, pro-Palestine people, and even like non-white pro-Palestine people pushing this great replacement theory nonsense. And it's racist. You guys need to look up the origins of that theory. And you have to understand that just because something is considered a conspiracy theory doesn't mean it's the truth, okay? There's a lot of psyops in the conspiracy movement, in the awakening movement, and you need to be able to learn to discern them. If one of them is making you hate your fellow man, then it's probably bullshit. It's probably a divide and conquer agenda. Like, come on, guys, learn to be a bit more discerning. So again, back to the point about veiling. Okay, again, it's not just about sexual modesty, okay? It's about, you've got to have a completely different lens on this, okay? And I don't think that many people who come from a Western cultural context are able to fully understand this to this level. But maybe, okay, because sometimes there is a journey that you'll go through on your path of feminine awakening where you want to be partly less visible, or not necessarily less visible, but reject Western beauty standards. Okay, so part of it is rejecting Western beauty standards and concealing your beauty for only the person that God has consecrated for you. Okay, and it has to be made with a sovereign choice. The woman has made that sovereign choice with God to only reserve her beauty for her husband. And that's how it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be enforced on her by him. It's a direct relationship that she has with Creator. But it's also the idea that you as a woman are sacred. Okay, you are sacred to God, and you've been chosen by God as a portal to the divine. Okay, and if you haven't read the text, this is why I feel so much like Ishtar Inanna energy running through. It's very hidden, and I don't think I'm not saying it's deliberate, or that the Ishtar or Inanna in mystery school teachings were syncretized into Islam. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there are certain universal truths that I think have been preserved within Islam, and one of them is the idea that as a woman you are sacred, and sexual access to you should be sacred. And within not just the Abrahamic lineage, but many other lineages, anything that's sacred and consecrated is hidden behind a veil. Okay, that's why the ancient temple priestesses were hidden in temples. And you had to go through many different levels of initiation, the 7 gates of Ishtar, the 7 veils to get to the priestess. Okay, so she's not just for everyone's consumption, for public consumption. Okay, she's consecrated, just between her and the Most High, or her and her husband, and that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, you know. I get it. I totally get it. Like, since coming into union, I totally get it. Now, am I necessarily going to choose that? No, because I'm a little bit too culturally indoctrinated by a Western narrative that I need to look a certain way and be visible and be beautiful to be worthy of people's attention, and for you to be wanting to look at me for like an hour and listen to what I have to say. And it's a bit difficult for me to break that conditioning. But I have broken it before. If you go and watch, some of my earlier videos, you'll see me showing up all crazy with no makeup on. And that was literally at the height of my modeling career, when I was like absolutely smashing it on magazine covers. And I needed a space where I didn't have to perform beauty. Like, I needed to be able to show up looking crazy, looking with no makeup on and with my hair unbrushed. Because that was a necessary part of my journey and my awakening journey. So it wasn't just about, obviously it's not veiling, but it's definitely about like rejecting those Western beauty standards. So yeah, and just to share like just my own lived experience as a model working in the West and working in Pakistan, I felt like I was treated with so much more respect modeling in Pakistan. And now the fashion industry in Pakistan is not particularly like religious, but just culturally, because they obviously emerged from a Muslim majority country, they do have a lot of those just norms, okay? And one of them is just protecting women's modesty and not treating us like cattle and not objectifying us, okay? Many models in the West have complained about objectification being very poorly treated, okay? I've been made to get changed on the street. I've been forced to wear things that I just was not comfortable wearing. Lots of models have complained about this, okay? I've been forced to wear like open cut bras on this was Selfridges actually. I have no problem calling out the brands that were responsible for this. It's not necessarily the brand specifically, it was the creatives that they hired, but it is also like their work culture, for example, okay? So shooting lingerie for Selfridges, they literally forced me to wear an open cut bra in the way that they shoot their e-commerce in in their studios is basically like they'll have like a big long hall, and it will be broken up into small little studios. So there'll be like 5 or 6 different studios, all divided by curtains, where they're all shooting like menswear, women's wear, swimwear, lingerie, product stills, and they'll have like 5 or 6 different photographers, 5 or 6 different stylists, 5 or 6 different makeup artists, 5 or 6 different models. And so you're shooting with all these other teams. And so I'm shooting lingerie, and there's just people walking in and out, but up and down, back and forth. And generally I have historically, as you guys who've been following me for many years know, I've been pretty comfortable with my body. I'm not shy about like posing in a bikini or wearing lingerie or whatever. But like this was like an open cut bra in like a wide open studio, and I just said, no, sorry, I don't want to wear that. And they're like, oh, we really need it short, like you can just cover like with your hands. And like I didn't want to do it, and that would never happen in Asia. That would never happen. They would never force you to do that. Certainly they would never force you to do that in Pakistan. They would never force you to do anything even like that. Like when I was doing fashion weeks in the UK, all the models are getting changed backstage. You've got sound engineers walking in, dudes, right? Lighting engineers walking in. Girls are getting like half naked, and all manner of dudes, random dudes, can walk in there. Like obviously they're all there like working, they're professional, but come on. And one thing that I want to add here, because it's extremely important and relevant to the point, Leanne Maskell, who is a model, well, she was a former model who, I think she's still modeling. She's actually signed with my agency, Body London. But she wrote an expose and an anti-exploitation guide to the industry called the Model Manifesto, when she basically studied for a law degree and briefly exited the industry. She told a story of how when she started modeling, she was doing runway shows. She's a very tall girl. She started modeling at around 13 years old, and they would do runway shows. And when she was backstage at the runway shows, they were allowing photographers, male photographers usually, to be backstage to take behind the scenes pictures. And she said that as soon as the models would start undressing, the photographers would just start snapping away, taking pictures of the girls half naked, undressing. These are 13 and 14-year-old girls. These are children. Okay, the only time in which this came to a stop was during the Me Too period, where suddenly models now have their own social media platforms, and finally we had a voice to be able to speak up against these abuses and collectively organize for some actual standards and an end to the financial and sexual abuse that was rampant in the industry. So that's the Western fashion industry. That would never happen in Asia. Nothing even like that. There's no men even allowed in the changing rooms. Like that would never happen in Pakistan. They would never allow that. Like as if you would ever have to get changed in front of a man. Like maybe you would, you might have like a gay stylist, helping you get changed. But in general, no, they wouldn't. Like you generally have like female dressers in the women's changing room, and no men are allowed in there. It's very strict. Like you wouldn't be expected to do that. I remember when we were doing runway rehearsals for Fashion Week in Pakistan, and some of the guys who were setting up the whole, set all the sets for Fashion Week, they have these huge sets and lighting and whatever. Some of the worker guys were filming the models down there, and some of these girls are really famous there. They literally stopped the rehearsal, the models. They were like, we're not doing the rehearsal until they literally stopped the rehearsal. They're like, we're not continuing until you tell those guys to leave. They refused. We didn't. They made all the workers leave, not just stop filming. They made them leave and not watch us anymore before we continued the rehearsal. That would never happen in the West. You wouldn't get booked again. And you can argue, oh, those girls were famous, so they had more leeway. I don't think that any famous models, Western models, would even get away with that either, because you would be replaced. I've worked on some pretty top sets with famous models, and they work just as hard. Western models who are famous in Europe, you would not know that they were famous. Okay, they are replaceable. Okay. And yeah, okay, it might be that you can argue that it's a smaller market, blah, 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 but it's a cultural norm. Okay. They were able to do this because they have certain rights as women. And one of them is a right to dignity, a right to modesty, and a right to respect. So that's my experience. I think that this whole Orientalist idea that Muslims treat women badly is just, it's literally dripping in Western Orientalism, Western supremacy and racism, okay? Because you guys cannot even see how badly you treat your own women here in the West. You think that that's normal. You think that that's just the way things are, but you can point at other people and you can go, that's wrong. But for you guys, it was just normal to look at porn. It's just normal for me to be leaking my sexual energy out everywhere. It's just normal for me to objectify teenage girls and be a fucking pedo and a predator. But no, those men, they're predators, they're wrong uns. No, you're all fucking wrong uns. You all need to heal. I'm so glad that so many women are just boycotting men just all over the world. Yeah, let's talk about Brazil, a Roman Catholic country. Okay, you got a footballer in Brazil, which is a Catholic country, it's not a Muslim country, who literally murdered his ex-girlfriend and fed her body to dogs. He was convicted of her murder and convicted of feeding her body to dogs. Went to prison, did the time, came out. He's worked for he's still continued his career, still playing football. Okay, so women's rights is a problem everywhere. It's not just a problem in Muslim countries. It's a problem everywhere. And obviously in the US, you have a convicted felon, a pedophile, a rapist, who is your president, who your people voted for, okay? Obviously not Monica, she's from the UK, but so many of this fucking MAGA crew voted for this guy, thinking, oh, he's gonna save the kids. Yeah, so like I said, I'm not saying one culture is better than the other. I'm just saying that we need to alchemize. We need to look at, different cultures and think, okay, what do we like? What do we not like? And continually question what we think we know. Okay, if you think that something is backwards and you don't understand why a culture practices a certain thing, I actually invite you to do a little bit of shadow work and actually talk to people and be like, where are you coming from with this? Okay, because I have been through so many dark nights of the soul where I've literally questioned everything that I thought was correct. Okay, because obviously, coming from a more conservative culture, which I rebelled against at a very young age, you can swing. It's very possible to swing the other way. Like if you come from like a very conservative religious background, it's very common. You see it often with like Catholic girls schools obviously have this stereotype, right? That they'll go the other way and they'll go into like being sexually liberated, hypersexual, blah, blah, blah. We talked about this in the ISTA, podcast, and then you realize that that's also really fucking demonic and devious, sexually deviant, and is also another trap. Okay, it's not the freedom that you thought it was. And then you start looking at the religious conservative community and their emphasis on marriage and family with a different lens and going, maybe I actually prejudged that. Maybe it's not as bad as I thought it would be. Obviously, it's bad if you're married to the wrong person who's abusing you and using the religion to subjugate and dominate you. Of course, yeah, then you want to be liberated from the shackles. But if you go back to it and go, actually, I wouldn't mind that with the right person. Do you know what I mean? There's like so much collective shadow work that's needed. So that's basically just, the work of alchemy. That's the work that we're doing here, the inner marriage, uniting those polarities and continuing to do the shadow work and continuing to have these cultural conversations and do this kind of collective inquiry. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please share your thoughts in the comment box below. Let me know what other videos you want to see from me. I've got a list of stuff that I want to get through. But if you guys, share with me what you want to see from me, then I can, bump those ideas up the list, because obviously I want to make sure that you guys watch the videos. So yeah, give this video a like, share it with somebody who you feel like needs to hear it. And yeah, join the Patreon as well, because there are probably some bits from here that I might need to cut out. So yeah, if you want to watch the full unedited, full spicy, raw, uncensored, unfiltered version, kind of unhinged, then check me out on Patreon. Link is in the description. All right, peace out, guys. One love.